Welcome to the Point of No Return podcast, a show at the intersection of technology and strategy. On this show, we interview industry leaders and experts to better understand how they think about strategy during this time of exponential progress.
Hey guys, welcome to the Point of No Return podcast. I'm your host, Nectar. On today's show, I had the pleasure of speaking with none other than my partner in crime, Martin Gourdeau. Martin is probably one of the smartest people I know. He's also quite bald, but I truly love the guy. He's my co-founder at PNR, and we have a blast running our company. We had a really good conversation, something I call the debate series that I hold from time to time, where we really try and go deep on one particular topic. Some quick background on him. He's an operations and technology exec with over 15 years experience, kind of the triple threat of tech, business, and operations, which is why I think he's really smart. He's worked in a variety of industries. Before PNR, he was VP operations at Global Eagle Entertainment, the world leader in in-flight entertainment. He led a significant restructuring and M&A integration. Previously, he was COO at a mobile app agency called nventive, working with clients like Expedia, Yelp, Bloomberg. He helped grow the company from 15 to 100 plus people in a year and a half. Prior to that, he joined Electronic Arts in 2004, starting off in tech and then transitioned to director of operations. Helped scale from 30 to more than 800 over 7 years. And prior to that, he began his professional journey as an IT consultant in supercomputing of all areas. We had a really good conversation about his career and a really good debate around new technologies. We spoke about his career progression that touches video games, tech, M&A, and consulting. His reasons moving from a big company to a startup, what no one is talking about today, and his thoughts on the pace of change. A good debate around where we stand today in terms of frontier technologies, particularly about artificial intelligence. I think you'll find that one interesting. And then finally, the development in technology that excites him the most today. I'm obviously a bit biased, but Martin's a great guy. I learn a ton from him every single day sitting right next to him. And I really hope that you'll learn something on the show today as well. Martin, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
So my partner in crime, Martin, is on a guest today. Martin, maybe to start, give us a bit of your background. What did you do in your career?
So I'll start with the beginning. I have a very kind of a particular background, a mix of tech operations, software development. So I studied in computer science, and out of school I started doing consulting work actually. For a company that did special effects studio installations and supercomputing, which is pretty particular. Those things seem kind of different, but actually pretty related. So when you do a lot of special effects in 3D, some people know about this, but you use these big render farms, and they're very similar to supercomputing installations. So I was pretty lucky to start out in that. It's very, very complex from a tech perspective, and it's a very interesting and challenging business from an actual business perspective in terms of managing growth, and it's a very niche market. So after that, I did that for two to 3 years, and then I went into video games, which actually it's when EA started the studio here in Montreal.
What made you switch? Sorry to pause, but. I never asked you that question. That's I'm curious now.
Yeah,
I've heard your intro just as a background. Like I've memorized your intro, and the joke we have internally is that we pretend to be someone else, and then you do my intro.
Add some snippets and yeah.
What did you decide to change and join EA?
It's I was always a really big fan of EA, the company itself. I liked, as you know, I like cars, and I used to like video games quite a bit. And I'll come back to that. And one of my favorite games when I was growing up was Need for Speed, and the Test Drive franchise, of course. And so EA was like the big car game champion way back, and I always kind of remembered that brand. So when they opened up shop in Montreal, we got them as a consulting client to set up the what I was saying before, like the big rendering farms and high performance computing aspect. And I got along really well with the general manager, and he ended up offering me a job, and it kind of happened naturally.
Okay. So it wasn't this big career progression that you thought?
No, it was very opportunistic. It was just I was just super excited to be working on creating the studio. Like we really started it from scratch. Yeah. I was just happy to be a consultant. So when they offered me a full-time position, it was kind of a no-brainer.
And you worked there for 7 years. You managed like hundreds of people.
Yep.
You started as director of tech, then you moved to director of operations. Right?
I started in IT. So there was, you have to imagine, like we moved into to Place de Marie, where our current offices are, on the lobby floor, and there was like absolutely nothing there. It was a tech company that was there before us.
This is what year ago?
This is in 2000. Actually, it's December 2003. I started as a consultant in December 2003. And they hired me full time. I think it was April 04. So I think I was like this fifth or seventh person in the studio, and they had nothing, so they needed IT to be set up, and it's very particular, very high performance. So I started doing that, and so it's a really odd thing to start something that big from scratch. The initial plan of the studio was to grow to 500 people. And you just have, they were recruiting this really high quality team, and they have no tools, no culture. It was really like starting from scratch. It was super exciting.
How was the video game space back then? It seems like, obviously EA and Ubisoft were the two big brands. Like, how did it feel to be working in that space in Montreal in 2004? Was it like this massively growing sector? Was it like the excitement in the air, or had it already peaked? I'm obviously a novice when it comes to that space.
It was the peak. If you look at the entire industry in terms of growth curve, and particularly in Montreal. So in Montreal, Ubisoft was already established, and we were going to be kind of the other big studio in the city. So it was, in terms of industry hype, it was pretty close to its peak, maybe just before. It works in terms of generations. When I was in the industry, anyways, it worked in terms of generations of consoles, and so it was like the new generation of consoles was coming soon. It was very exciting. We were working on very big titles. We were working on Medal of Honor and James Bond back then.
Okay, wow.
And it was a big franchise. Very promising, very high budget productions. It was incredibly exciting. Kind of like the sky's the limit, and we could build a world-class studio from scratch. So it was super exciting.
So it was like the big leagues, basically, right?
It was entering into the big leagues, but in a really odd way, because we were trying to build something from scratch that was going to play in the big leagues, but starting from nothing in Montreal. So building our own culture, how we were going to become one of the big studios. While keeping a separate brand from EA. EA has studios everywhere in the world, so we wanted to keep kind of this separate culture. It was a very exciting, very challenging.
You spent 7 years there, right?
Yeah, 7 years. So the first 3.5 years, I was basically head of IT and everything that was basically related to IT. And then I moved on to a different role where it was director of operations for the studio. So I was managing a bunch of stuff. I kept IT, so I hired a head of IT under me. I took on quality assurance, and the most interesting aspect was outsourcing work. So either outsourcing within EA, kind of insourcing, or outsourcing to other companies. So EA is a company that does a lot of that. So, for example, there was a franchise X that was built internally, and we wanted to build out a game on PSP, which is like the handheld, the Sony thing. We would give that out to an external studio because it was considered less high value than the console version. So we did the console version internally and sent the work externally for the other smaller consoles. So that's where I kind of started dealing with business and tech at the same time, pretty sizable contract negotiations, and I kind of discovered a passion for the business aspect of technology.
So then you left, you joined a mobile app agency, right?
Yeah.
Directly.
So
maybe just the reason for your departure.
Yeah. Good question. So when I left, so we did I came in and like I mentioned, I was I think 7th or 10th or anyways, it was below 10. We grew the studio to about just above 800. There was an acquisition in there. Actually, there's 2 acquisitions in there. So that was quite the experience. And so after having lived some pretty insane growth, I wanted to live insane growth, but from a small startup that's not backed by a multi-billion-dollar company in the U.S. So I looked for a more local challenge. And it was the kind of the moment where it was the uprising of mobile applications. So I went to a small studio back then called nventive, where I was, I think, employee number 15th around there. So it was a few months before I started there. Actually, it was just a general software development shop, and they had decided to kind of pivot towards mobile applications. And the owner and president wanted to go for some very high growth. So after considering my background at EA, we thought it was a good fit. And so I came on board, and we took that from I think I was 17, grew that to about 100 people in a year and a half. So that was pretty intense, pretty exciting. It was very different challenges than I had lived at EA. It was managing cash flow and building culture from nothing, and we didn't have like a parent company to refer to. And the market was actually changing very, very quickly, as you can imagine. It was the peak or the peak growth period of mobile apps. So yeah, it was very, very also very exciting.
Yeah. And then from there you left. You joined a bigger firm.
Yeah. So after that, I was kind of looking for a hybrid. So I had lived the major the major public corporation, super high growth. I did the small startup, privately held, and I wanted something in the middle. I wanted to touch mobile and games. So I went to work for a company called Global Eagle Entertainment, which is a small-ish publicly traded company in the U.S. That had just bought a company in Montreal. They did in-flight entertainment, so it was kind of a very good fit of. They did mobile apps. It was everything in-flight entertainment, so they did mobile apps for reading newspapers and consuming content while in the air. But they also produced video games. So they did their own their games. They also licensed games. So I could kind of put in practice my the negotiation, outsourcing negotiation that I had learned at EA. It was kind of the culmination of everything I had learned in my career in one position. So it was actually pretty cool.
And then you had a terrible idea of resigning a high paid job to start something from scratch.
Yeah. We'll see in a few years if it was a terrible idea. But I think the realization there was that I was there for about 2 years, and I think I realized that I like living through big changes, big growth periods, or restructuring, or post-M&A integrations. I like living through very challenging and intense periods in companies. But I kind of got bored eventually if that slowed down for even a little bit. So I thought consulting could be fun, and the rest of the story.
So I see you maybe to kind of pivot the direction. So I see you kind of as a triple threat, right? You know technology really well, operations, particularly on a tech company, and then you also have a pretty good handle on corporate strategy, particularly M&A, integration, negotiation, right? You've been part of several acquisitions, mergers, etc., right? And I think that's obviously, what you bring to our business, the consulting business. In terms of the client work that we do, we often have to demystify some of these areas, right? So particularly things like new technologies, right? So maybe to start at a high level, how do you consider when one of our customers is considering, let's say, a new technology, from what lens do you approach it?
There's a few possible answers to that. So it really depends on the depth of knowledge and the depth of understanding of the client. like you said before, I've built this capability of being able to tie together tech and business. So the first thing I like to do is kind of analyze where they stand in terms of understanding technology. It's kind of a unfortunate side effect that's going on in the market right now. So there's so many advancements and there's so much stuff in general going on in tech that there's a lot of business people that see opportunity but they don't understand it. So
give me an example.
Well, I mean, there's quite a few. Like
one that pops to mind. Maybe.
Well, just look at investors. You know, we work with a lot of investment funds at PNR, and something we realize is that they see business opportunity. Their gut feeling tells them that it's good, that they should go in that direction, but they don't understand it well enough to either basically call it bullshit or realize that it's a really good thing. So that's where kind of that expertise comes into play, to tying the business with the tech. So to get back to your previous question, first thing I'm going to do is assess where they actually stand in terms of comprehension, and then try to bridge whatever gap is left. That's the first step. And second step is provide my personal expertise and opinion with regards to the matter at hand.
Yeah, that's interesting. And try and limit the swearing. Or it's a family show.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm just kidding. I could say fuck. Okay, so yeah, you bring up an interesting point, right? So trying to bridge the gap between where they stand and where they need to be.
Yep.
How does the strategic lens apply in that case, right? Like, is it? I guess it varies on the business challenge, right? Like, if they're looking for growth, if they're looking for an issue, like, are there situations where they shouldn't, invest in technology? Like, I'm thinking of VR, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. And we've done mandates like that in the past of kind of assessing the needs of a company and helping them understand if the business context is right for a particular technology. So you mentioned VR. We've had clients in the past, and it was more me leading this. So I guess I could go a bit more in detail. We've had clients in the past where they got all excited about either all the current buzzwords, tech, AI, VR, whatever you want to call it, and the CEO basically wants to know how this could impact their business. Is it a threat, first of all? Is it an opportunity? If it's an opportunity, is it the right timing? How much is it going to cost? And that's where kind of I can step in and help creating, first of all, a business case to understand, does it even make sense to talk about this at all right now? And if it does, then, start creating P&Ls and collateral to help them make an actual business decision. So it's really fun to be able to be in that very particular position of constantly bridging that gap. It's something I got used to in the last few years, and it's something I actually love doing. So I think we're in the right business.
It's interesting. Yeah, asking a different question, a different way. Like, what is the biggest change in the industry right now that no one is talking about?
Which industry in particular?
Technology.
In tech, wow. Big question. The biggest change right now in the tech industry no one is talking about. I'm leaning towards, there's this kind of there's this thing with the demographics of the industry where the people that don't understand anything at all are on their way out. And I'm going to go a bit more in depth. Like your typical 50-year-old today was in his early 30s when the internet came, or maybe late 20s. So he or she already knows what's going on. They have a pretty decent basis of technology. So I think things are this phenomenon is accelerating the rate of change that can be accepted by the industry at large. So the people that don't know anything about tech are almost, I'm not going to say non-existent. There's still some in very, very traditional industries and very the more senior people in very traditional industries. But that said, I'm going to say the 80% of everyone in pretty much any industry today is extremely tech aware. So it's kind of accelerating the acceleration. It was already going fast. It was already accelerating fast, but now I think it's gaining even more momentum, even quicker, because that resistance to change is slowly disappearing.
Okay, because to unpack your point a little bit, so people that are 50, 60 running companies today, when they're making their chops and building their companies, the tools to have success weren't the same as the tools, the prerequisite tools that you need today, basically, right?
Yep.
In order to build a company today, well, you need to understand, technology, you need to be able to market online, all these things.
Yep.
That wasn't the case 20, 25 years ago.
Yep.
So as these people phase out of their careers and into retirement, well, the younger crop of executives are going to be able to.
Yep.
I get it. My, devil's advocate for a second is that, well, in tech, for sure in tech industries, right? Like, like a VP of sales at Salesforce, for instance, maybe 5-10 years ago, didn't they really need to understand, the deep technical component? Today, it's like it's table stakes, right?
Yep.
But what happens to a non-technical industry, right? Someone that's in manufacturing or in the wood industry, even if they're 45 and kind of tech savvy-ish, it's still not like a prerequisite for them necessarily, right? Or am I wrong?
No, it is. And that's why I said before, it's not, far from 100% there. What I was trying to say is that how can I say this? I mentioned the 80-20 rule before. I think a lot of people are starting to be more and more aware of tech, and it's enabling this even higher rate of acceleration. But you're totally right. Like, you look at a very, very traditional industry like textile. Look at the people that are in their late 40s, early 50s, and even early 60s in textile. For sure, they have a massive learning curve in front of them. Sometimes it's not even an option to even tackle it. So for sure, there's still a lot of that in the industry, in more traditional industries, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna to switch gears, but along the same lines is like we tend to live in these hype cycles.
Yep.
Because of, like you mentioned, some people that aren't fully aware don't really get it, and we tend to obviously bitch and moan about some of these things in the office. I remember in 2011 it was the year of mobile for 3 years in a row. Yep. We're currently in the year of AI. And there's obviously good things about AI, or like more specifically, let's say machine learning. What do you think is the most misunderstood component of AI today, right? Obviously, we know it's all early. No one thinks the robot wars are really coming, except maybe for a few articles online.
I think it's a funny analogy, because I think the most common misconception is in my opinion, these aren't the years of AI. Years of AI aren't even close to being here yet. I think AI today is like mobile was when Nokia had their first successful phone.
Like before the Moto Razr, for instance, right?
Pretty much. Like, I don't know, the 63 whatever. I don't remember the little blue phone that everyone had. I think
used to play Snake. Remember the
exactly.
Snake? Yeah.
So I think AI today is Snake on that Nokia phone. People they can't even conceptualize what's coming in the next few years. The thing is, no one knows if it's in 4 years or 24 years or 50 years. Everyone sees the potential, hence the hype. But I mean, we're at, I think, the embryonic stage of AI. It's not even. I mean, the reality is that, and I don't know, like the general awareness, and I in the meetings we have in our day to day, we kind of see this, but true AI simply does not exist. And you can ask any reputable expert, and they'll agree. The self-awareness doesn't exist in terms of artificial intelligence. All we have today is a very sandboxed algorithm that can learn to do things better. And by do things better is what it was initially programmed to do. So it's extremely restrained right now. And deep learning is kind of enabling us to branch out of that. But again, I think it's extremely early. there's some cool applications. You have Google recognizing a dog from a cat, stuff like that. Like it's interesting, and we're starting to see these some business applications, but like we are so far from the true potential of AI.
I've never asked you this, and maybe you won't be able to know, but what do you think are the biggest technical barriers today to breaking through, to move beyond the limited scope of bunch of data and then training and learning on one particular data set and that improving, right? Like that's pretty much the use case today.
Yeah.
What's required to break out of that?
To break out, yeah. So that's a big topic. I've read quite a bit about that, and it makes me fetch back to my old computer science days. I think ultimately, if you're going to boil it down, it comes down to programming is still just if you look at the fundamentals, it's if statements and conditions and rules, and you can emulate intelligence with conditions and rules, but you'll never have any sort of creativity, or you'll never be able to really emulate the way the human brain works, which is the final objective. So at its core foundation, software development is a human writing rules into a machine. And I think, me personally, as long as that's not going to change, we're going to see some really awesome stuff. People are going to kind of try to circumvent those restrictions as much as possible. And you're going to have, better and better chatbots, but it's the brute force approach. It's going to be massive amounts of computing data trying to emulate the way a brain works, but it's still a human entering rules in a machine. And I think the real breakthrough is going to be when that changes, and that's not tomorrow.
Well, okay, and we don't even know how to approach that.
Exactly. We're still going with the massive computing power brute force approach, and it's.
Yeah, that's cool, Martin. Maybe one last question then. Is there any development in technology recently that excites you the most? Could be motorcycles.
No, actually, I like my motorcycles vintage. I like to keep a hand on old stuff once in a while. It feels good. Advancements in technology.
It could be a latest trend that you think is exciting.
Yeah, I think it's what I find interesting is we talked a lot of AI. There's so much potential applications to new technologies right now that we haven't seen, or you see like Kickstarter projects, and then it kind of dies down because people are interested or they don't have enough marketing money. What I'm really excited about right now is to see practical applications of all the cool stuff that's going on. So like AR, VR, some forms of deep learning. I think we're just skimming the surface in terms of practical applications. I was reading about, you talked about motorcycles. I read about this company, I don't remember the name, but they did this augmented reality motorcycle helmet. And like you mentioned, I ride myself, and safety is always a big concern on a bike. And this motorcycle helmet has real-time information of traffic, weather, but it doesn't bother you in terms of being a distraction or being a layer between you and the road. The UX is absolutely amazing. It's kind of a Google Glass-ish type technology, and it just gives you these slight hints of even where cars are around you. It has a 360 camera on top of the helmet. I think that's the cool applications that we're going to see of all those technology advancements they're going to make a big difference in the next few years. That's what
you know what the name of the helmet brand is?
I can't remember, but I can find it.
Get you something for your birthday.
Yeah, it's pretty damn expensive.
Martin, really appreciate your time today, man. It was great to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Point of No Return podcast. Never miss an episode by clicking on the subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play.